technical webinar where we're going to talk about licensing around Siebel software and the most common compliance issues seen within the market. My name, for those people that don't know me, is Richard Spithoven. I'm one of the managing partners of a company called B.lay, which is headquartered in the Netherlands and supporting many different end users globally with their challenges with regards to the management of enterprise software licenses like Oracle, but also other software vendors like Microsoft, IBM, SAP, VMware, and many, many more. And up to 2.5 years ago, I was managing Oracle's license compliance team called License Management Services as a regional director. Together with Anamaria, we will both give you an overview of what we've seen over the last couple of years in order to educate and equip the customers that are making use of Siebel about what common issues we typically see. Now we're moving to the agenda. We're going to cover a number of things today. So we're going to talk about how do you actually need to look at your license entitlements and how does that all work. What's the difference between horizontal and vertical Siebel applications? What's the difference between employee, customer, and partner applications? What are the issues about Siebel license keys and what is the unawareness we typically see with a lot of customers? We're going to talk about how the Siebel pricing is actually historically being applied versus how it actually translates to today's Oracle's pricing methodology and metrics. And then we're going to zoom into the different user scenarios. For example, what's the difference between authorized usage versus real usage of software? Is that an issue? And if so, why is that an issue? What are the implications on inactive users still having access to the Siebel software, or the incorrect assignment of specific responsibilities within the Siebel application? What is the difference between professional edition and the enterprise edition of the Siebel application? And what about external users and internal users? But we're also going to focus on how the historical concurrent licenses are migrating nowadays to processor-based licensing models and what the issues are around custom views and how to determine the usage with customized views within the Siebel application. And that we will conclude then, of course, with some time available for anyone in this call to address any questions you may or may not have. So please feel free to address any question you have after the presentation, because both Anamaria and myself are happy to provide the answers on your questions. It shouldn't be underestimated that actually, in order to understand what you're actually entitled to make use of, you actually need to look at a number of different documents and sources in order to understand what you're actually entitled to make use of. A lot of people think I have an ordering document or I have a support maintenance renewal, and that tells me exactly what specific Siebel products I'm entitled to make use of. But if you have a closer look, as shown on the next slide, there are a number of different documents that actually all should be taken into account in order to understand what you're really entitled to make use of. Now, how does that work? Let's say that you originally bought a license through a specific order form. That order form at all times refers to a license agreement. In the past, Siebel called that an SLSA, a Siebel License and Services Agreement, or a Software Licenses and Services Agreement. Later on, Oracle changed that license agreement into a OLSA, called an Oracle Licenses and Services Agreement, and today Oracle calls those license agreements a OMA, an Oracle Master Agreement. So the order form at all times refers to a specific license agreement, and the license agreement typically defines the metric under which you have bought the specific licenses as reflected in your order form. So in order to understand what is actually being bought with an application user, for example, you would need to have a look on your OLSA, SLSA, or OMA in order to understand how that application user has been defined. But if you've bought those licenses, let's say 10 years ago, and at that moment in time a specific version of the software is available, and you have been paying support maintenance year over year over year, it means that from an Oracle licensing perspective, you actually have granted the right to make use of the latest version of the software. So even if you bought licenses 10 years ago, if you have paid support maintenance over the last 10 years, it means that you are entitled to make use of the latest version of the software. Now, as a result of that, You need to be aware that your license agreement also dictates you that the program documentation specifically defines what specific products, components, features, modules, or functionalities are part of a specific license. So a license in Oracle terminology is never really referring to a single specific product or component that you're entitled to make use of, but actually a bundle of features, functions, modules, or components that all belong to that specific license. And given the fact that you do have the right to make use of the latest version, you should be making sure that you keep an eye on the program documentation as well, because Oracle, like other vendors, keep the right to bundle and unbundle certain functions and functionalities from one older version to a newer version. So your licenses are at all times dynamic and can or cannot include different features at a later stage, even if you've bought licenses 10 years ago. Now, apart from that, there are support policies and business practice documentation, which are typically published online, that dictates how you should license certain software programs in a certain scenario. So be aware that if you want to have an understanding of your licenses, all those different documents and sources should be taken into account in order to understand what you're actually entitled. Now we're moving to the next slide. We will start talking about the differences between the different Siebel CRM applications that are there. And this is the moment for me to introduce to you Anamaria, who will take it over from here in order to provide you an overview of the differences from a perspective. So Anamaria, can I hand over to you?
Thank you, Richard. So I'm going to briefly present you the differences between the horizontal products and the vertical ones, and how these differences can affect the licensing. With Siebel, we can have horizontal applications, which are also called industry applications, and basically they are generic solutions that can be used in all industries. And as an example, we have Siebel CRM base or Siebel contracts. On the other hand, the vertical applications are industry-specific solutions, which are available for the major industries, such as communications or public sector. And we have, as an example, the Siebel Public Sector CRM base, which is the base product usually used by the customers from the public sector industry, or Siebel Communication Media Contracts, which is an individual application that is used by the customers from the communication industry. The vertical application, they contain the entire set of modules, including the horizontal one, and this makes them more expensive. What we usually see is that I was saying that the customers, they usually don't realize that they don't really need to to install a horizontal application while they are licensing or licensed for vertical ones. For instance, I will give you an example. Let's say that we have a customer that is licensed for 100 licenses of Siebel contracts, but they installed in their Siebel environment the Siebel communication media contracts. So as you can see, the name of the products, they are pretty similar, but the communication media is specifically built for the vertical customers. So if the customer installs the vertical product but is licensed for the horizontal one, for this specific situation, when we have 100 users, then we can have an exposure value of $85,400. Exposure value was calculated as the number of users multiplied the license price plus the number of users multiplied by the support price. As a conclusion, as I said earlier, when an organization licenses the Siebel contracts, they should install the Siebel contracts functionality and not the Siebel communication media energy contracts functionality. In addition to this horizontal and vertical products classification, we also can have products classified by the user type. And they can be employee applications, which are mainly used by organizations' employees. For instance, the salespeople that are using Siebel contracts. Customer application, of course, used by the customers of the organization. They are mainly designed for purchasing online, like Siebel Public Sector e-service, or partner applications, products to be used by partners of the organization, like Siebel Public Sector Partner Portal. This type of products, they also can cause non-compliance issues, and we'll see them later on during our presentation. But now we are going to talk about the Siebel license keys. We may say that the installation of the license keys within Siebel environments is the factor that triggers all the license compliance issues we have seen so far within our customers' environments. Why is that? Because when a customer installs Siebel, all the views, objects, technical functionality are installed in their Siebel repository. However, access to these items in the Siebel user interface is restricted by the license key. Prior to Oracle's acquisition, an end user entered into a license agreement with Siebel after he would receive his unique license key to enable the functionality he paid for. Once with Oracle acquisition, the licensing model changed. It was aligned with Oracle's licensing model, and which allows to the customer to download by themselves the license keys he wants from the website you can see now on the slide. Usually, the downloaded license key, they include more functionalities than the organization is licensed for. And that's why this can cause large uncompliance issues. Now I'm going to present you the differences between pricing, the Siebel pricing versus Oracle pricing, and how these differences can affect the licensing as well. Prior to Oracle's acquisition, the Siebel products were sold as an individual application, like Siebel Sales Enterprise, or application bundle, like eAdvisor or eConfigurator bundle. Once with the acquisition, Oracle started selling the products under the three standards, these three standards that I'm going to present you. We are talking about the component licensing, which is the traditional a la carte pricing model and the most cost-effective for customers. As an example, we can have the licenses Siebel CRM base, which is licensed by application user, that allows one individual to use one single Siebel software program. The next category is the custom application suite licensing. Under custom application suite licensing, a customer may purchase different software products in one bundle. For instance, Siebel CRM base licensed per customer user. And this metric allows one individual to use multiple Siebel software programs as defined in the bundle they signed for. And the enterprise pricing allows customers to license the desired Siebel software programs for their entire organization without having to keep track of specific licenses. And as an example, we have Siebel Asset Management, licensed by Enterprise Metric, Enterprise $1 million in revenue. How are these differences between how the differences between these two pricing models affecting the licensing? Well, they will mainly affect the customers that acquire Siebel products before Oracle's acquisition. Why? Because many of the products that were sold initially by Siebel, they migrated into some other products. So if the customer is uncompliant for a product that migrated into some other product, he will need to cover the licenses gap by acquiring licenses for the new product, which is usually more expensive. And now I'm going to present you the differences between license metrics, because of course after the Oracle's acquisition, things they changed a bit, but not that much. So the metric units that Oracle applies today for the Siebel products are not totally different. They do have different names, but they are not counted in a different way. Siebel products were generally sold per user, and one of the most common user-based was named user, which migrated to the application user. Both named user and application user licenses focus on the number of individuals authorized to use the software, regardless of whether the user is actively using it or not. Another type of user-based license is the registered user. The partner applications are typically licensed by a registered user, and the current registered user licenses are equivalent to the legacy registered users licenses. They both focus on the number of business partners, individuals authorized to use the software. We also can have non-user-based licenses, such as processor, physical server, and computer. Usage counts for this type of metrics are based upon the hardware on which the Siebel software programs are deployed. Computer licenses are really similar to the legacy ones, physical server, and they both focus on the number of servers where the software is installed. We also now can have some metrics that became available for Siebel products only after Oracle acquired Siebel, such as custom suite user, enterprise, but also we can have metrics that are not available anymore, like concurrent users that migrated to processor. And we are going to talk about this migration later on during our presentation. Authorized versus used. I think this is one of the most often license compliance issue that we've seen so far to our customers. As I mentioned before, the most common Siebel license types are user-based, such as named user, authorized user, and registered users. And for this type of metrics, the total required number of licenses is determined by the total number of distinct individuals which are authorized to use the software, no matter if they are actively using it or not. One of the most common mistakes of organizations using Siebel is to license only the users that are actively using the products, even if their contracts state that every single user authorized to make use of the software needs to be licensed.
And I fully agree with you, Anamaria. I think the most common issue there is that a lot of people are not aware of the fact that they need to do active user management to make sure that all the individuals that do not longer need an authorization also should be a proper revoke authorization process in place in order to make sure that individuals do not longer have access if they do not longer need the access as well.
Yeah, exactly. We often see that to our customers that their former employees, for instance, are still authorized to use the software. Or also the same thing applies to people that change roles within the company. They don't need the software, the Siebel software anymore, but still somehow they are authorized to use it. And in both cases, those users, even they are not employees of the company or they change role within the company, they have to be licensed. How can you do that? You can do that by performing the user deactivation process in a correct and complete way, so that anyone who doesn't need the access to the Siebel programs anymore to be removed. You can do that by having access to two Siebel usage reports. The first one is called Siebel Authorized Usage Report that allows organizations to see the number of users that are authorized to use their Siebel programs. And the second one is the Siebel Actual Usage Report. And based on this report, you are going to see the number of users that actively used a certain Siebel program within your organization. By reconciling these two reports, then you can properly clean up your Siebel environments. Inactive users still having access? The answer is usually yes. Why is that? Because most of the organization do not comply with Oracle's methodology for measuring usage in a Siebel environment, and often a clear deactivation methodology is lacking. What usually happens is that old users are simply deactivated by changing their logins, or, as I said before, is assumed that anyone who left the company or changed roles should not be counted as having access to the software anymore. Thus, again, it is very important to apply a proper and complete deactivation process that consists in updating employee IDs, statuses, responsibilities, and many other changes at both the database and the application level. Another very common uncompliance issue seen is the assignment of the responsibilities. Users have access to the Siebel products once they have assigned a responsibility. Each responsibility contains one or more views. Each view belongs to one or more Siebel products. What happens with all this data is that Siebel administrators usually they assign to users responsibility that may contain some views that belong to some unlicensed products, but they don't really realize this assignment. And thus, a proper cleanup should involve also validating the user responsibility association process. The professional edition versus enterprise edition. This is another factor that can affect the licensing of the Siebel products. Siebel Professional Edition is a scaled down version of the Siebel Enterprise Edition. And as you can see, is a good fit for smaller businesses, but of course the software has its limitations because it's more cheaper than the Enterprise Edition. For instance, vertical products are not available in the Siebel Professional Edition. Thus, a big pharmaceutical company will that is licensed for the Enterprise Edition, of course, will benefit from the vertical functionality, while a smaller organization that is using Professional Edition would not. How does it impact the licensing? Well, it's pretty simple. The Professional Edition customers often use the Enterprise Edition functionality without realizing it. This usually happens when the downloaded key provides access to more functionality than needed, and as a consequence will allow the usage of functionality that wasn't paid for. In case of an audit, organizations making use of Professional Edition modules or functionalities need to migrate all their Professional Edition licenses to the more expensive Siebel Enterprise Edition license. And I will give you an example to understand how does it work. So we have two products. The first one, it is called Siebel CRM Base, and it is a horizontal product, an Enterprise Edition product. And the second one, it is Siebel CRM Service Base, Professional Edition, and it is a Professional Edition product. We have the technical functionality. The technical functionality for the Enterprise Edition product is Service Base, and the technical functionality for the Professional Edition, SPE Base Service. So these two functionalities, they're supposed to do exactly the same thing. One belongs to the Enterprise Edition, the other one to the Professional one, for the same product version 8.1. If you look behind the technical functionality for these two products, you will see that the number of views, they are quite different. You can find approximately 900 views for the Enterprise Edition product, which is Siebel CRM Base, while for the Professional Edition product, you can find only 100. So, as you can see, the functionality is pretty different, and if a customer by mistake installs a license key that belongs to the Enterprise Edition while he is licensed for the Professional Edition, he will receive more views. Thus, then at some point he will need to migrate his licenses to the Enterprise Edition. Another very common license compliance issue seen is related to the type of users. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, Siebel products are employee products, customer products, and partner products. And of course, there also can be analytics products. The analytics were discontinued after Oracle acquired Siebel, and now they are part of the business intelligence applications of Oracle. But we are going to focus only on these three type of products: employee, customer, and partner. What we often see is that many organizations actually provide access to their external users, which are in this case the customers and partners, to internal applications. So, for instance, let's say that we have a bank that has that is using Siebel CRM as a product. And they also have customers that are using the home banking service. It can happen that all those customers that have access to the home banking service to also have access to internal applications. So in this case, we can talk about like thousands or millions of users that at some point they might be allowed to use the Siebel CRM base, for instance, which is an internal application that costs around 4,000 euros. Then this is actually a very large non-compliance situation, and of course and the cost. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that we have a customer that is licensed for the base application called Siebel CRM Communication Media Base with 40 licenses available, and Siebel Communication Media Energy contracts for 10 licenses. We have employees and customers. We have 35 employees and 500 customers. Those 45 employees, they have access to the base product. So yeah, they are covered by the 40 available licenses. And the 500 customers, somehow they also received access to the Siebel Communication Media Energy CRM base. In this situation, the exposure value for this specific customer will be around $2.5 million, which is quite large, I would say. Another situation that can make customers to be uncompliant is the licenses that are the old licenses, the old concurrent user licenses that migrated to processor. So in case of non-compliance, customers that are licensed for this concurrent user metric, they will need to purchase additional licenses on the new license metric, which are more expensive. And I think the last common license compliance issue we've seen to our customer is related to the custom views. Many organizations, they choose to customize their views, and they actually don't realize that this may cause uncompliance issues. What organizations should do, they should pay close attention to what Siebel modules and functionalities the custom views are built upon, especially since if only one single custom view is mapped to an unlicensed application, this may cause large compliance issues risk again. And to show you exactly what I am talking about, so we have this customer that is licensed for 40 Siebel CRM bases and 15 Siebel 40 products and has 10 licenses of Siebel Communication Media contracts. Let's say that we have a list of 3 customized views, which are, the first one is B.lay order entry. Behind this view there are 38 users that and this view was mapped to Siebel Communication Media contracts. In this situation, we'll have an exposure value around $18,000. Why? Because the customer is licensed for the horizontal base product, which is CRM base, and in order to have to be licensed for the Siebel Communication Media Energy contracts, you also need to have corresponding bases for this product, which are the vertical one, which are the Communication Media Energy base. The second view was mapped to Siebel forecasting, and it's okay. There is no cost associated to this mapping. The third one, though, B.lay all account list view. This view can belong either to Siebel billing management or Siebel CRM base. Siebel CRM base is licensed. We have 40 licenses for this product. But for Siebel billing management, we don't have. Thus, the customer will have to pay around $8,000 because the mapping was done in this way. So what is very important here to remember, when the mapping between custom views and products is done, you need to pay close attention. So in case you cannot really allocate a custom view to a licensed product, at least you need to choose a product that is not that expensive for your business. Now I will invite Richard to conclude this presentation. Richard?
Thank you, Anamaria, for giving us the insight on the most common compliance issues seen. And I think if you look at all the different issues that you addressed during this session, like individuals being authorized to make use of the software versus individuals actively making use of the software, that there is a difference in there, and the internal users versus the external users, which require separate ways of licensing, and the vertical versus the horizontal applications, the Siebel Professional Edition versus the Siebel Enterprise Edition, and the custom views. It all comes down to the fact that you see that there is so much knowledge needed in order to properly manage your licenses, that if you do not invest in the proper way, that you typically will be caught during the course of an audit to be heavily non-compliant. And to be very honest, I think as a conclusion, what I see, any customer never being audited before, almost at all times, will find compliance issues during the whole audit process, because there's a lot of complexity related to it. And in order to make sure that you address this, instead of being, like I typically say, a sitting duck in which you're being called during the course of an audit, I would always give a conclusion to our customers. And I would say, given the complexity related to software licensing and the proper software license management around that, make sure that it becomes a priority within your higher level management, and make sure that there is the right attention and budget available in order to set up a proper software asset management program. Of course, not only related to Siebel, but in general, because software assets are typically being underestimated in terms of what it requires to manage them properly, but the financial risks related to the lack of software license management is typically not acceptable for any organization at all. So that should just become a priority. And I would say people should make sure that internally a software license management team is being set up in which different people from different disciplines within the organization are being created and working together with C-level sponsorship, and make sure that on a regular basis the entitlements, the deployment, and the resulting compliance position is being determined in order to address any software license compliance issues proactively. Don't wait until you're being hit during the course of an audit. Take the necessary steps and make sure that you obtain the right knowledge in order to be proactive, because proper software asset management, instead of avoiding financial risk during the course of an audit, will also help you to make sure that you in the end can save costs because you're in control. And not being in control typically means that it will pay you sooner or later. It will cost you more than it actually will cost you if you would manage it properly. So that would be, in summary, my conclusions with regards to these Siebel license compliance issues. For now, I would want to open up the call for anyone in this call to address any question you may have towards Anamaria or myself. I'm very happy to address any question you may have around this topic. In case there are any further questions, you at all times are happily invited to reach out to us, and we can address your questions on a one-to-one basis. Just to make you aware of the fact that we do have on our website as well a number of different white papers that are freely available for you to download, covering different license compliance issues or providing you insight on how certain things work with regards to Oracle licensing, like Oracle unlimited license agreements, what to expect during the course of a license review or a license audit, what are the most common compliance issues seen about Oracle databases, Oracle e-business suite. Siebel is the topic that we covered today. Soon we will have webinars about the licensing of enterprise agreements like employee license agreements or enterprise revenue under management, which we covered today as well. We will continue to publish these kind of white papers because we believe it is crucial to educate and equip people to create awareness on what are the most common compliance issues. And we believe much more in you need to share before you can gain, and that in the end, if we are able to provide our knowledge and expertise to be widely available for many different people, that a lot of people can benefit from it. So if there are no further questions for now, I would just want to thank everybody to join this webinar. We hope you find it educational, and as said, if there is any support needed or if you have any specific questions that you would want to discuss on a one-to-one basis, feel free to reach out to us. This presentation will be shared as well with all our contact details, and then we'll definitely be there. And like I said, on the 28th of April, we will have our next webinar where we will cover the licensing of Oracle enterprise licenses like employee licenses and enterprise licensing. So if you would be willing to join, feel free to register through our website, and we're happily there to invite you and to talk about that topic. Thank you for today, and I wish you all a very fantastic afternoon. Thank you.